my name is Christian Polso, and today I will be talking about Drupal security stuff. So the title of my presentation is How to Survive Drupageddon and How to Prepare for the Future. And first, something a little bit about me. My name is Christian Polso. I'm from Finland, and I am the CTO at Vaista Productions, which is we are a small Finnish Drupal development company. And I have personally been working with Drupal since around version 5, so that makes it like probably 2007-ish. So that's almost 8 years now. But I had a earlier PHP background on different frameworks like CodeIgniter and Kohana briefly, and Take PHP and so on. You can follow me on Twitter at Christian_Polso. I mostly tweet about Drupal stuff, but there might be some PHP stuff, but I try to stick to my professional profile on Drupal. And also briefly about our company, Vaista Productions. We are a Drupal solutions company. We do development stuff. There's the map. We are based in Turku in Finland, which is like just a bit west from Helsinki. And yeah, we focus on more customized Drupal solutions on integrations, so a lot of commerce stuff and external APIs and so on. There's our website at vaista.com, and VaistaProd is our Twitter handle. But the purpose of my presentation is today to talk about what was Drupageddon and what happened there, and also how to prepare for similar kind of vulnerabilities. And at the end, we will talk about also some best practices, some simple stuff you can do to keep your site secure. So yeah, what was Drupageddon? Drupageddon was a vulnerability found in Drupal 7's database abstraction API. So it was pretty deep there right in the core of Drupal 7. Drupal security team was informed about it in September 2014. Drupal security team is the team organized by Drupal Association that handles all these kinds of when there's a new vulnerability found and so on. And they released an update for it in October 15, 2014 as a version 7.32 of Drupal. So that means that if you have a version that's less than 7.32, that means that that version is old and it's vulnerable for this bug. Yeah. So Drupal security team acted pretty quickly on this. So it only took them some weeks to make a fix and release that new version. And definitely, this was the biggest vulnerability in Drupal's history. It was a really massive vulnerability that affected like hundreds of thousands of websites, pretty much. The name was given by Twitter. Just a Drupal user started using the hashtag Drupageddon. Notice actually this is without an L. It actually comes up later on. All right, so let's get a little bit technical here. How did it actually work? So here's a couple of lines of code where the Drupageddon bug was found. So this is in the file includes database folder in the database.inc file. So if you know a little bit PHP, you can see here that we are looping through two levels of arrays here. The first array, we are looking at the variable args. Those are get parameters from the user. So that means those are the input values from the user. And then we can see on the next level, we are looking inside those parameters, we are looking for variable I. And those variable i's are supposed to be keys, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. As like just a simple array. This is how it was presumed, but that's kind of the problem. They were just supposed to be keys, not always. not always integers. So here's an example, some basic HTML. We have some input text fields with name, email, and then brackets and email one. That means that it's an array inside that input, so it's like a inside that variable, and the key is email one. And below you can see that there's the email. This is the values from PHP from these fields. So there's the email from the name, and then email one, email two, and then the values. So as you can see here, they are not integers here. We have just inputted in the HTML that they will be strings. So I wonder if I can put strings here. I wonder what will happen if I just put some MySQL in there. Just write some basic database SQL in there. I wonder what would happen. Well, this is pretty much what happened. All the nodes in your site, all of them, their titles are uh-oh, all of them. Just by changing one field. And yeah, so this pretty much means that any anonymous user can get access to your site's database. It's right there. So pretty much in conclusion, you should go update your site right now if you still have version that's less than 7.3 to, like, seriously, like right now. But yeah, so this happened, and a lot of media wrote about it. BBC was one of them. They claimed that, yeah, millions of websites got hit by this, and a lot of other places wrote about it, like Wired and CNN and so on. So a lot of like mass media also. So yeah, the aftermath was pretty bad. BBC claimed 12 million, and afterwards the hosting partners were really quick to patch it. Like partners like Acquia and Pantheon, they were really quick to just patch it out for all of their clients, like without asking, which is a really great service from them. Especially Acquia. Acquia did it like in just a couple of hours when the notice was released that they just patched everybody up. And of course, Drupal's security team was really useful on this issue. They notified everybody well and in time, and their schedule was really great. So yeah, here's a little bit something different. I did a blog post where I crawled through the top 15,000 Drupal websites. I did this around a year ago in November 2014. And then there's the link to my blog at polso.info. Why is this in the presentation? I was interested in finding out, this was a couple of months after Drupageddon happened, that I was interested in finding out how many people were actually still vulnerable to this. Like, how lazy are people to update on their websites? So yeah, I crawled through them, the 15,000 websites, took a couple of weeks, really, and the results were kind of interesting. Around 32% at the time hadn't updated. They had a version that was less than 7.32, so those were still vulnerable to this attack. Something to keep in mind is that I wrote the script to just check the release version of Drupal, so you can patch the Drupal. You can patch the Drupal without increasing the version number, so this might not be 100% accurate, but it should be a good presentation that people are pretty lazy when it comes to updates, even on like top sites in the world. And yeah, I am currently working on an update on this to see if there's still anybody who uses that old version, but unfortunately it didn't make it to until this presentation. It's gonna take a couple of more weeks because, surprise, crawling through 15,000 websites, it takes a while. So yeah, so it takes a couple of more weeks, and I will post a new blog post on this issue. Something that I found also interesting at the time, there was one website that was running Drupal 8, it wasn't even alpha or anything. It was just they pulled a version from Git and just hosted a website on it. Yeah, probably not that secure at the time, but yeah, definitely has changed right now. All right, so if you got hacked by Drupageddon, you shouldn't panic. Just first thing you should do is recover from backups. So you should always have backups on your side, probably daily or so, and just recover before the Drupageddon vulnerability was found. So just take a couple of days before that, and then manually update the core and so on. So you should be pretty much fine. Also, there's a great tool on Drupal.org called Drupageddon. Notice this time with an L. That it's a tool that you can check that have you been hacked from this vulnerability, or do you need to update it, or just will you be vulnerable to this kind of attack? But in general, how to be safe from such security vulnerabilities is to keep Drupal core and updates, Drupal core and modules always updated. That's like the number one thing on this presentation. That if you go to the Drupal add-in and you see that red box over there that says you have some security updates, you should always apply those. Like, yeah, that's the main thing. Like every time if you see there's something out of date, yeah, definitely keep everything up to date. Also, one way to keep secure is use managed hosting platforms such as Acquia, Platform SH, and Pantheon, because those guys are really fast on patching on everything, and yeah, they have a great service for that kind of security stuff. And also, if you have some custom code in your Drupal site, you should write a secure code. In Drupal.org, there's a great guide on how to write your own custom code and make it secure and keeping it secure, and just best practices on how to program. All right, and then let's look at some best practices. These are like not pretty much in any particular order, just some general things that you should watch out for when you're building your Drupal website. First big thing is permissions. If you have a Drupal website that has a lot of different roles, you should really check out and review them. Are they actually that important? Like if you have a different kinds of editor roles, and just because if you have a ton of roles, it's really hard to manage them, and just keep them up to date and see that you should review them. Are they necessary, and just can you simplify them somehow, and so on. And there's some contrib modules that auto grants, like you can assign a administrator role that always gets all the permissions. You should really look out for that. If at possible, don't use it, because that's a huge security risk, and just if somebody can get access to that kind of account that has that role. And yeah, from time to time, just if you update your site, review those permissions manually. Just look through the freaking whole list and just see, is everything here necessary? Should this role exist? Should this module exist? And how about its permissions and so on. One important thing, of course, is XSS, cross-site scripting. In basic, it means like users can input their own HTML or JavaScript code on your website, like without notifying you, and just it's really there's a lot of great material on XSS and Drupal. One way to keep that secure is review your text format, that you escape all the HTML and scripts and so on, and just review those also, and see who has access to what text format. Also, if you have a website where, like, let's say you have like a forum where all kinds of users can register and just start posting nodes, check out what kind of text formats they can access. Can they for some reason can they input some script tags in titles or body or whatever other fields, and just review those if possible. Authentication is important, of course. You should really check out what kind of passwords you install on your Drupal website. So don't make them short, and just it's really hard to determine what is like a strong password, but really something like has to be over eight characters and so on, and just try to make it as strong as possible, those passwords you have for editors and administrators and so on. Auto logout is also great for this. It's a project on, it's a module on Drupal.org. What it does is pretty much it automatically logs you out from the website. If you, for example, you have to log into a Drupal website on some public computer, and then you leave it on, then the next guy who comes to the computer, he can access that website, of course, because it's open and so on. Auto logout will automatically log you out from the Drupal website if you haven't done some action for, like, let's say 15 minutes and so. So that's really good if you have some really secure stuff. SSL, of course, important. SSL and HTTPS means that the connection from your computer to the website is encrypted. So that SSL means SSL encrypted. So it means that if somebody is listening to your network between those two endpoints, they cannot see what's happening. It's all encrypted and just gibberish in general. So yeah, that's one way to keep your site secure. Just install SSL. They are not that expensive anymore. And there's some free ones also. And yeah, if you expect that there might be some situations where, like, somebody might be listening to your network. And then some common security misconfigurations. Admin password. Don't use admin. Don't. I see that all the time. Don't use. Never. There's never a good excuse for using that. No. Make your password secure always. And also at least try to never use PHP input. So PHP input is the module in Drupal 6 and 7, also probably older ones also, that lets you in some text formats you can input PHP code, and you can input PFC code in views and such. Yeah, if that's possible, try and remove PHP input and all that's dependent on it, because there's also a big security risk, because if you can, because PHP input goes straight to the server layer, and that's not something you don't want your website editors to have access to, all the server-side stuff. Try to avoid FTP and use SFTP or SCP. That's pretty much the same as SSL, because FTP is kind of old protocol and it doesn't have any kind of encryption. SFTP and SCP does have. They have pretty much the S from both names comes from secure, because they use encryption. And once again, if you believe somebody might be listening to your network, or just in general, you should really use SFTP and SCP. One thing you also shouldn't do is don't print PHP errors on your website. You should really put them in the Drupal's database log, or just in some PHP log, because if you print out your PHP errors, that means the attacker has access those error messages. They might leak out, like, for example, some database credentials or any kind of credentials that's in the PHP on your website. So yeah. Also, one thing they might leak out is some version numbers. They can leak out the version numbers of Apache or whatever, and if there's if you have an older Apache and it has some known security vulnerabilities, they know that they can attack on that input and so on. Also something about versioning. Try not to use the development versions in production. Those development versions are something that's currently working on, and they haven't been that truly tested yet. Of course, it varies by module, but in general, dev versions are not recommended in production. Just because they are working on it, it might change. Some specs haven't been written down yet, or they haven't just been QA'd well. But if you do use, if you have some situation where you have to use dev version, you should really truly test them out inside your company and just check it out. How secure are they, and are these exactly what you need for your project? All right, and then some big issues here. Let's talk about some custom code. So if you have custom modules or custom themes or whatever in your Drupal website. So one thing is that open source is pretty awesome. That's because these modules that get put on, for example, GitHub or Drupal.org, those modules have hundreds and hundreds of users. That means that they are really tested out by a lot of people in production, in testing, and all kinds of different environments. That means that a lot of eyeballs are looking at that code. If you do your own custom code, there's only you, the programmer, who can see that code, and there's like nobody reviewing it. Of course, there might be some situations where there's like a bigger company, there's some QA. QA might be testing out those codes you write, but in general, it's pretty much always the one freelancer guy who writes some custom module. So open source alternative concrete modules are really much better because they have lots of users, they have lots of use cases, and they're truly well tested out. Easy issue tracking is one, of course, especially at Drupal.org. You can see that they have really worked on that issue tracking, because it's really easy to make an issue and just get notified on updates on it, and people act on it really quickly. So that's really, if you make a custom module, that might not happen. You might have your company's inside issue tracking, but it might not be checked out by that many people as in a open source environment. And some common pitfalls I have seen in custom code is one of them is that you don't probably check your permissions. So for example, you can make an endpoint in a Drupal module, and then in the access callback you're just lazy, you don't write anything, you just write one, so it always returns that every user always has an access to some endpoint. You shouldn't do that, even if it's some endpoint or some page that everybody should, anonymous and registered users should see it. You should really build a permission on it with the Drupal API and just check it correctly, because the specs might change. It might be that that page at some point isn't anymore available to anonymous users, only registered users, and you have to check out whether they have access or not. One thing is like the programmer's syndrome is that it's kind of hard sometimes to notice your own mistakes. Like you kind of have this like a tunnel vision that people have given you specs, you write this code, and you don't really notice something coming from the outside. It's hard to think outside the box on your own code. So those are something that people should review your code and see. Just review it for some security stuff and see if there's any mistakes there. So yeah. So pretty much in conclusion, keep your modules updated always. just Drupal core and config modules, always update them whenever possible. Because if you see that red bar over there, it means that somebody might be attacking you, and there's a pretty good chance there might be somebody attacking you. So always get rid of that red bar and just keep your modules updated. Try not to use development versions in production because those are not tested out well, and just keep them, And also review your custom code. That if you have somebody, some company write you a module or you write yourself, get it reviewed by somebody else, just to get another look at the code, and some people can work through the logic differently and see whether or not the code is secure. Well, actually, pretty much that's everything from me. So thanks everybody for your time. And Are there any questions about security stuff?
Yeah. About passwords.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are the best simple rules to simple editors and users?
Simple for passwords. Well, longer is always better, of course, and just some entropy is always great. To something that always makes them like more complicated to use as much characters and so on, because there's no really hard limit on Drupal's passwords. So just longer is better always, and try to as complicated as possible, pretty much. Yep. Anything else? Don't think so.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.